This is overdue. It's time. It's time to kind of come together and develop these relationships so that we can kind of move forward. So I think everybody's kind of come into it with the same mindset.
Well, I guess if you look at the leadership exchange on its most foundational level, it's about building connection and giving people a chance to come together, perhaps in a space that they haven't in the past, to get to know each other.
There's differing opportunities to insert yourself, but it's not so many that the work or the group required.
The pilot project was only 6 people. It was very important that we get 6 people we knew would be able to click with one another, and so we were quite selective in how we did that.
They've been paired up, a First Nations leader and non-First Nations leader, and they'll have a resource person. One of the facilitators will support them to prepare for their visits and to debrief the visits. And they'll each work very hard to find 6 days in their calendar that they can spend together.
When I was asked about the opportunity for participating, I thought it was an excellent opportunity and leapt at the chance. I am a strong believer in dialogue as far as it being a primary tool for overcoming difference and those sorts of things.
I would hope that what I can offer Chief Baird is insights into hopefully a corporation that gets it, that gets the need to be involved and communicative with Aboriginal communities. And then what we're trying to do is fine-tune our understanding of how to do it even better. And by better is defined not just in benefits and rewards for me, but benefits and rewards for the community.
When I think about the success of Leadership Exchange, I think about this being a sustainable kind of teaching and experience, and that it's like dropping a pebble in a pond, you know, and seeing the ripple effect of having one person's experience affect, you know, a group within a company or a community.
The one thing that I would gain is a better understanding on how, I guess, business operates, how it's effective within itself, but also all the constraints that it has to operate within.
There could be an opportunity through this exchange to better understand how we could adapt our culture, how we could change our culture of our corporation to be more attractive to the Aboriginal population so that they might consider us somewhere that they could work, so somewhere they could survive and thrive and grow themselves in conjunction with our company.
I really do have faith that the underlying premise of the program, which is if you get individuals to spend a bit of time with each other, they can't help but get to like each other. And once they do that, they become humanized, and then they can see each other's point of view, and then they can get down to solving some of the problems that make life so hard.
My reality has been that these relationships, one of the greatest barriers to truly building successful relationships across the Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal business worlds, to some degree there's a level of fear in there. And that's based on our history, based on stereotypes.
What I'd like to see, maybe for myself personally, is an understanding that we're all human, that we all kind of, it doesn't matter who we are or who we represent, that we have a lot of the same interests in family, in community, in giving back, in being stewards of the land, whether we're First Nations or whether we're business people.
What I thought was neat about the program in its design, I'm not here negotiating anything with anybody. This is a knowledge transfer. This is a learning opportunity in a very non-threatening environment, because I'm not here to ask these Aboriginal people, leaders, for anything in particular other than their wisdom and knowledge, and they presumably are here under the same auspices, which is to learn from me so we can do a better job translating that knowledge into our own organizations.
When I think about the leadership exchange and what the gifts are that lie inside this journey or adventure that's begun, it lies in the subtleties of these pairs of First Nations and non-First Nations leaders having a chance to prepare to visit with each other, to spend time in each other's leadership environments, and the reflection afterwards. And it will be in the reflection and the articulation of those subtleties that we will really learn what is the value of this. What can come of taking the time and the space to come together in this way, which is a different way, and yet such a simple way.
We got up pretty early, I think it was 4:35 in the morning, headed out to the airport and took a flight to Fort St. John. This is the closest airport to where Plutonic and GE are building British Columbia's largest wind farm.
Flew into Fort St. John and had a rental truck, and then drove a couple of hours into Chetwynd. And so on the way there, it was a bit of an explanation about how he came into the wind energy and how he became involved in some of that initiative and where it was at. From Chetwynd, we met one of the construction managers, and then from there we drove again another couple of hours up the hill.
So the towers are about 90 meters tall by the time you're at the top of the nacelle, which is the part on the top. And then the three blades are 45 meters each. So being on top of that tower, it's like being at the top of about a 25-story building.
The site itself and the windmills itself was quite impressive, quite enormous. These things were huge, right? And from a distance, you can see them up on the mountainside, but once you get right to them, they were just massive.
If you look at the bottom to give you a sense of scale, we've got 144 bolts around the outside, and the bottom of this is 3 meters in diameter, which would be a pretty significant tree in your territory. And I think it was neat for Willie to see how the plans that we had talked about in the office the day before are actually coming to fruition and being executed on the ground.
That puts them into perspective when you see them way up there and they don't look that big.
Absolutely.
Look at how big that is now.
Yeah.
If we get near a nacelle, we can do that on the way out at the bottom.
Yeah, I think seeing the nacelle.
Yeah.
So that big thing is a transformer. $45 tons, sorry.
45 tons.
Yeah. And to give you an idea of weight, now it's not the same for volume here, but a normal 45-gallon drum full of rock would be a ton. So you can imagine 45 of those sitting on the top of this little tower.
Wow. We actually got to see one of the generators itself. I can't remember how much tonnage it was, but it was a staggering amount that would go inside of this cell, which was the generator that sat on top of this big pole, 26 stories up. I think it was really beneficial to tie the whole picture together. You know, you go from the office or from the boardroom to the planning stage, to the engineering stage, and then actually to go right out into the field and to actually see that in practice on the front lines was beneficial.
A big lesson learned for Chief Charlie from his experience and getting to know me and witnessing Plutonic is if you really have the will and an imagination, there's pretty much no boundaries on what it is you might be able to go and create or accomplish. In early February, I was going to spend some time at Chehalis with Chief Willie Charlie. Drove out there. It's a beautiful part of the Fraser Valley. I hadn't spent any time in his specific area. I'd been to Harrison Hot Springs before, but that was as close as I'd gotten.
Harrison Lake, Chehalis River is the traditional territory of the Chehalis. During Donald's experience with us in Chehalis, we went on the boat to look at the traditional territory from the water, which was also to try to give a bigger, clearer picture for him to understand how we have to be stewards of the land and how we're connected to the land and the great history that we have on the land. And so we think that everybody needs to be out there on the land to see that, to see the great history.
It was a very nice, relaxed way to just be on the land and spend time in fresh air, and again, a nice casual environment to get to know each other again.
I think the boat, for me personally, is medicine. Anytime that I can get out onto the water and get out onto the land, where we can see a lot of what we call the sacred sites.
When we were out on Harrison Lake in Willie's boat, we came to a place called Echo Island. The island, it looked to me like a sheer rock bluff going up almost vertically, and if you screamed at it, you know, it was screaming back at you, which was quite interesting. Hello!
Jeez, that's remarkable.
The way my mom described it, she said, when people come out here, it's like your ancestral spirit. It's your connection to your, if you will, the spirit world.
Wherever you see these sacred sites, there's a story. And this story will talk about what's there, but it should also have a moral teaching. It should also be able to give some real meaning as to why it was put there.
I think Willie really feels that he is of the land and part of the land, and so this provided great insight into, I think, the core of Willie in him sharing the land with me, and that was really gratifying. I felt like I was really getting to know him there.
We really think that anybody that comes out into our traditional territory, that wants to do business in our traditional territory, or that wants to get into partnerships with Chehalis, need to kind of understand that connection, that long history connection to the land, and how we say we are the land. During our trip on the water, we also went to where there's pictograph sites, the rock painting sites, where there's petroglyph sites, where they're actually etched right into the stone.
A big thing was learning a lot about the stories about where certain things come from, which I found really interesting. Mythology goes that if man is respectful of the environment and the resources that have been placed here, he can sustain himself, and that's why, as I feel now, Aboriginal people say they've got such a strong connection to the land, and why they can be, I think in their viewpoint, the ultimate stewards of the land. And learning those kinds of things, that's been just fantastic in giving me a deeper appreciation for the First Nations perspective.
When I was constructing what Harold and I would do together, I was trying to give him a breadth of experience about where we would go and what we would do. I had arranged for Harold to stay in Vancouver at the Coast Vancouver Plaza Hotel. And so I met him there in the morning, and we met the general manager, Linda Hagen, and Linda took us on a tour of her property.
Wherever he went, he had meetings with his managers, staff, and deciding things, and something almost like a day-to-day I feel that he would be doing, even if I wasn't there.
As we toured the property, the physical plant, I encouraged Linda and I asked Linda questions that led her to explain how she relates to her team of ambassadors and how she leads them.
That's sort of what I wanted to see him on operation with his, I guess, his operations managers of each hotel.
This carpet goes to go down, and Craig says, Graham, you know, the baseboard's pretty beat. I'd love to replace it. You know what it costs to put wood baseboard through a hotel?
Oh, yeah. No, the artwork's fine.
Oh, you're not changing it here?
No,
oh, okay.
No, we're not changing it.
All right, I thought you were sneaking in, you were doing artwork.
I just thought you were listing all the stuff.
No. Exactly. Let me look at that list again. The Coast Plaza is about, or at that time was about to undertake a pretty extensive renovation, a complex renovation, changing windows, putting in new air conditioning units, a very disruptive renovation of the hotel. So it was a great vehicle to discuss and demonstrate how we make some complex decisions about how we're going to operate the buildings, about how we're going to communicate those changes to the ambassadors, how we're going to communicate them to the outside suppliers that are going to work with us, and again, how all the leadership functions are going to take place. It was a great vehicle for that kind of a conversation. Then it's right and left justified. It should be in the middle.
Well, I thought we wanted them
all in the middle? Okay.
If the door opens in the middle, and it goes to the left, for example, okay? Do we want...
We've managed to meld together the sort of physical tour and the beginnings of a talk about leadership and how Linda envisioned leadership to give Harold a broader perspective about how we lead. The third hotel that we visited while Harold was in Vancouver on his first day was the Coast Coal Harbour Hotel, which was still under construction, hadn't opened yet.
The place was really in a chaotic state, but getting prepared to outfit a hotel to open in 10 days, it is exciting.
Harold had said that he was interested in the band building a hotel eventually, so I thought it would be useful for him to see a hotel that was in the final stages of construction and to see it literally from before it opened. So it was really to satisfy, in no small part, it was to satisfy his need to understand what was involved in putting a hotel together.
We are considering building a hotel, and if that's the goal, is to build a hotel, now I understand that there's a process that we need to go through to make that decision.
Because she's all over this, Trevor. So the first day we spent touring the physical plants here in the Lower Mainland, 3 of them, and then the next day we met in our Coast Hotel's corporate offices. We had arranged a day where all the senior leaders of the organization had set aside an hour to sit and chat to Harold and I about what it is they did.
3 months.
They discussed the business that needed to be worked on, as their day-to-day business, and each one of them brought up issues that needed to be discussed and decided on.
He got a better sense of the breadth and complexity that would face him if and when they made the decision that they wanted to build a hotel, what sorts of things they should be looking for.
Yes, it is very informative, and I guess that's one thing I was thinking about that, and for all of the Indian band business and that, we don't have a staff for each department. We have one person that may be covering 3 areas, and try to do a job well. It's difficult.
I'd like to think that he achieved his personal objective of learning a little bit more about the hotel business and how it operates, and as he said, how to ask the right questions. I drove up to Merritt on January the 18th, not knowing what to expect, and Harold met me at the hotel in Merritt, and the adventure began.
When he arrived, I think we started off with lunch, and then we did a community tour, around Merritt, and then up into our reserve. I think we've first covered the community, just the layout of the reserve, and to our school. We went to visit our band school, which is on reserve.
Beautiful building with all the facilities that a modern elementary school should have, gymnasiums and cafeteria for the kids and classrooms, of course, teaching everything from maths and English through science. If I'd have one regret is that there's not more of the band's children attending it, because a number choose to attend the elementary school that's available to them in Merritt, and the community would be that much richer if more of their students could attend their own school.
Coldwater School has a pit house or a winter house, what we call a sheepskin, and we went and toured in there. It is a place where a couple of the cultural teachers go in, and that's where they conduct their classes.
It was interesting because you could see how a traditional pit house would have been heated by the fire in the middle of it and how it was vented in the chimney and everything else. You get a sense of, with all the creature comforts of modern heating and air conditioning and lighting, you get a sense of what a pit house might have been like.
An authentic winter house, it would be a place where many families would live. And these were homes that, as we moved around, that when people stayed for the winter, that's usually what is built.
They have this opportunity to help to educate their own youth and to develop, in the long term, the leaders that they need to find to lead their community and their nation.
This row of housing was the first CMHC units that were built. So trying to provide housing for our membership and how to bring services, I guess, to our membership. He continuously ran into and shook his head of the issues why we have to work with Indian Northern Affairs on anything that we do or anything we build on reserve. It's just shocked that somebody else had to give you an authorization to do it. Meetings and checklists.
Watermark. It's a prayer.
I think Graham got a better understanding of what the Aboriginal communities have to put up with. One is when they're trying to do business, and another is what they got to work with.
It's only relatively recently, last 10 to 15 years, where they've been called on to act as leaders for their own business. And Harold's organized band is working to do that. And as I said, it's the opposite of what we do in the hotel world, where we're able to find great leaders, but we have to create or help to foster a culture. He has the mirror image challenge because he's got this incredibly rich culture, but they need to develop and grow their own leadership models.
Ian and I had, when we had arranged our exchange, I was going to go to his company first. So I flew to Calgary to their main operation. It was pretty much as corporate as you can get as far as coming in on a plane and finding the stock exchange building. It was interesting experience from that perspective, and again had some apprehension even though I knew Ian and I would hit it off.
We didn't want to spend days sitting in the office and looking at offices and talking in meeting rooms. We wanted to get out to the field and see a little bit of the operation. The next morning, bright and early, we headed up to Edmonton. Part of the visit to Edmonton that I think I found most beneficial is Kim and I had really some one-on-one time. We could chat a little bit, you know, in a quiet setting around some of our observations, some of our thoughts and feelings around Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal business.
We had a really in-depth discussion about engagement and community input and how industry and First Nations work together or don't work together and those sorts of things. So it was very illuminating.
And I think we found in some of that dialogue that we think a lot alike and we had a lot of similar views. Up in Edmonton is where the operations facilities are headquartered. That's the start of our pipeline, so we spent some time both touring the facility.
I didn't know much about the pipeline industry, so it was a lot of information to take in. but got to see the facility firsthand.
So these are 250,000, some of them are 250, some of them are 150,000 barrels. So when we think about the pipeline of 300,000 barrels, it's like 2 of these tanks going into the pipeline every day. Our operation in Edmonton is an industrial operation. There's lots of equipment, there's lots of safety standards, there's lots of training, there's lots of environmental sensitivity to the commodities that we're moving. A lot of those aspects of our business will be very relevant to Kim as she hopes to develop their industrial lands. We'll convert this from 19 tanks to, I think, ultimately about 35 tanks on this site over time as that capacity increases. The next morning, we had a debriefing session at my office for a couple of hours, some one-on-one time as well as with some of my staff.
It was great how well received I was by his staff. The hospitality was amazing. All the staff that were in attendance were genuinely interested in me and my community and the background of what we were up to. So I found that very, very positive and testimony to sort of Ian's leadership within his company.
I think those 2 or 3 days that Kim had with me in Calgary and Edmonton were useful for both of us. Again, I think it set a really good foundation of getting to know one another. We didn't feel like there were any barriers or obstacles to our conversation. It was pretty free-flowing. There were no off-limit subjects, and that made it for a pretty useful conversation.
The Tsawwassen experience was probably a lot more busy with a variety of activities compared to what happened in Calgary, because it was kind of more of a day in the life experience for Ian, seeing what I do.
I spent the first day really accompanying Kim in a few meetings that I found very interesting. I was able to be introduced to her government, her staff, some of her leadership team in Tsawwassen.
Ian had quite an intimate look at some of the projects we're working on day in and day out in that initial meeting.
So I was injected immediately into kind of her life and her space, and that was most interesting. The next day we really covered a lot of ground.
I gave him a tour of our office and our facilities, and he really liked our Early Childhood Education Center, which is a preschool and daycare all under one roof. And so he got to see different parts of the facility, including the playground, and got to meet some of our staff.
It was a beautiful building. It was very well laid out. It was very well supplied. The people and the teachers that I met that were working in the facility were as keen and energetic and positive and helpful as I could have wanted.
We spent far more time than I thought we would because he was very curious about all of it and could kind of relate issues in relation to his son and education issues and some of the challenges we're seeing as a community in relation to education.
I went to Kim's for breakfast on day 2, met her family and her kids.
They didn't expect Ian along with pancakes, I don't think, even though I told them we'd be having a visitor. They didn't know what to expect.
It was very casual, it was very relaxed. We chatted the whole time. I continued to ask him a lot of questions about our community and about things and aspirations that they have. In not a, kind of formal boardroom across a desk kind of question and answer, just in a casual way over breakfast.
About 2 weeks before Ian came, we had a request from the federal government where senior officials from their central agency wanted to come, would be in the area and were interested in seeing our community because of self-governance and everything we were up to.
We got on a bus and drove around the whole community.
It was a very beautiful day, and it was perfect time to do that sort of tour, and very glad that Ian could participate in that. I think he had a really good idea of the challenges of my job, but also the opportunities that lay in front of me as well.
I think I was not expecting to get as much out of my visit as I did, which isn't to say I didn't expect to get something out of it, but I think it exceeded my expectations. I think that it gave me some deeper understandings of some things that I hadn't even contemplated. I hadn't even thought about, this kind of face of the community and face of the family and how close those are to business dealings. I was naive to it and underestimated it. And I think by and large, most businesses like mine would say the same thing, that thinking past it into the community is not something they're accustomed to doing. So yeah, I think without a doubt it met and exceeded every expectation I had.
I think it's about going forward beyond the exchange and really seeing the world and that relationship building process through a different lens.
When I went to Donald, I spent time with him and his family, and I found it very gratifying and very rewarding to kind of know that he was a family man that made him very human. But also when he came out to Chehalis, he had met a lot of my family.
I don't know if I was as fully open with Willie as he was with me. But it was very rewarding to be trusted with that. I think we did develop a really good common bond through this, and I think that he has a pretty good insight into who Donald McInnes is as well.
I'm profoundly convinced in the simple equation that when people get to know each other and work with each other, all kinds of things are possible. And when you develop leadership of this nature that's kind of gone through this experience, it will have momentum. Together, work hard and cross it and put bridges across it, and that's what it's all about.
I think we accomplished more than we ever envisioned that we would, or at least I feel. I took away more than I ever had hoped to take from them. Now, that's not because I set low expectations going in, it was a very, very rich experience.
I guess the only obstacle was time. Trying to fit in the time and make it, I guess, beneficial to both sides.
behind the community, behind the business, behind the opportunity, it's just people. It's just people who are trying to do the most with what they have and are trying to maximize the benefit for their own constituency as best they can. And that getting to know that person and developing a relationship with that person who's in front of, you know, the business or the community is just like anybody else. We're all just people trying to accomplish something.
At first I was concerned that we were too similar and that there wouldn't be any sort of depth to our discussion because our perspectives were more similar than not. But instead it allowed us to get to an even more deeper conversation about some of these issues, which I found very rewarding.
How do you reconcile those things? And I don't have an answer, but it's a question that council and or is economic development or about.
It's so simple. Those of us who've been involved with it now for a couple of years, as we've tried to get this organized, we keep saying, how can something that's so simple be worth all the effort? But it's worth the effort because besides being simple, it's fundamental.
There's thousands, a million reasons why we should build these relationships. We're all connected.
Any learning opportunity is a good one, and this was certainly a learning opportunity. But the leadership exchange only works when you have people who are committed to the exchange, because it's the exchange part of those experiences, that sharing of experiences, that makes it rich. So you have to find people who genuinely want to share in order for it to work.
All 6 participants and the instructors or facilitators, we've all been very enriched through the process and the opportunity. And you know, I don't think the exchange ends here for any of us, and we're all going to continue to build on it personally, because this has been a process of opening up your mind to opportunity and looking at things in a bit of a different way, and I think that will be there for all of us for a long time.
I very much believe that this sort of opportunity is overdue, but maybe it takes a number of forces to make something like this work.
Maybe we can make a little bit of a difference, and maybe we can take a couple of steps forward and help our, you know, respective, you know, sectors or communities do that. And a couple steps forward is better than none.